Welcome to Affordable Athlete Meal Prep with Dr. J. This month we're going to be making barbecue glazed chicken. If you'd like to follow along with the video, here is our grocery list. Hey, it's Dr. J here, and we're back in the kitchen today working on a simple recipe that will be easy and economical for you guys to create. Quick overview, kind of as we've got this large view of the kitchen right now. We're going to be making barbecue chicken with oven roasted green beans and some carrots and red onion, as well as corn muffins today, or cornbread, all right? And so we'll get going on this. And nothing that I have in my kitchen is extensive. I have actually a rather bare kitchen, but even with the bare essentials, you guys can still make a lot of really good things that are very nutritious and are economical for your budget as well, all right? So today I've got this pan, it's a silicone pan. It's gotten some good use on it as well. I've got this frying pan or saucepan that we're going to use today, that's got some good mileage on it. We're going to use that to cook our chicken and to make our glaze, because essentially once we're done cooking, we're going to turn our sauce into a glaze. Over here are our corn muffins that I mentioned before. Got these at Costco, 10 bucks for 12 of them. I've got half of them in the fridge in the freezer, and here's the other half that I plan to eat this week with my meal. This bag of green beans costs $5. It's organic. Not everything you buy has to be organic, but our goal is that we're buying as real and as unprocessed food as possible. And so this is 2 pounds that I got for $5, which is a pretty good price. And then I had leftover carrots that I had julienned the other week. So they're nice and sliced up. I'll put those in the oven along with those green beans. I've got 1 red onion that I'm going to chop up, and depending on where you buy it or if you buy it in bulk, this can cost you anywhere from probably 50 cents to $1.25, give or take. This pack of chicken, boneless, skinless chicken thighs, I got as part of a larger 6-pack, and that 6-pack cost me somewhere between $20 to $26. So approximately at about, this is just over a pound's worth of meat in this pack here. And so 6 of those packs, so between 6.5 to 8 pounds for about 20 bucks. So that's less than $3 a pound for boneless, skinless. It's pretty good. So I had that thawed, so I have it in a separate container. I've got a couple of sauces that I picked up at Aldi's. Aldi's is a favorite of mine. These sauces were like $1.50, I believe, per each of the bottles. I have a bunch of seasonings, and as your seasoning rack grows, it gets cheaper for you to actually utilize more seasoning. And so I've got onion powder in here, cayenne because I always like a little bit of heat. I've got some crushed red pepper. I have some Himalayan pink salt. I've got the Trader Joe's umami seasoning blend, but you don't necessarily need all of these, but I would say for sure make sure that you've got salt and pepper, and then you've got either some onion powder or maybe something like this blend I picked up the other day that I'm curious about. This cost me $3.50 at Target, and it's onion, garlic, and a little bit of pepper in here in an oil-based concoction, which I plan to mix in with our roasted vegetables. So we'll get it going. And as usual, I use grapeseed oil as one of my main cooking bases just because of its high heat point. And it's relatively cheap, and it also goes quite a way, and you don't need to use necessarily a lot of it to get a lot of what we're looking for from that moisture and that heating aspect. Real quick note, before you handle food, always wash your hands. So I'm gonna wash my hands with a little bit of this dish soap. So we'll get started with the vegetables first. That way, when I use my cutting board, I only have to use 1 cutting board. But if I start with the meat, I run the risk of some cross-contamination from the uncooked meat. And with chicken, salmonella is a real risk as well. So I'll start out by washing our green beans and then getting our vegetables prepped to go on the pan with it to get that going before we start our meat. Mainly, you want to give all of your vegetables a quick look over as well, just to make sure there's no like mold or no soft spots on them before you get going. Everything has good color. There's no brown spots and no bruises. So get most of the water out of here. Dump these onto our pan. While we're getting this situated, I'm gonna preheat the oven to about 375. So I'm just picking out some of our bruised ones. I think I'm only gonna cook half of these. And now that we've got a more favorable situation with the amount of green beans we've got on our pan here, I'm gonna cover most of these with a little drizzle of this grapeseed oil. And some of our carrots here. Give this a little stir. Spoon to dish out some of this. And it's okay if it's not perfectly coated right now, because we'll end up stirring it as we let it cook in the oven. A little bit of pepper, a little bit of salt, a little bit of onion powder. Just in case it's not as hot as we want it to be, some crushed red pepper. All right, so the oven is about ready for this to go in. We're gonna set this in. I'm gonna set my first timer for it for about 20 minutes. It might take us 30 to 40 minutes, give or take. Look at that in there, beautiful, beautiful. So we got our oven at 375 and we're gonna start the timer for 20 minutes here. So before we get chopping, I'm gonna take some of the layers off this onion here, and then we'll give it a quick rinse before we put our knife into it. So we'll get started here. We'll end up using about half the onion. Make sure your fingers are out of the way. We're just gonna be basically sauteing this in the pan. I'm gonna make this a pretty chunky cut, so I'm gonna kind of cut it from the center here. So we'll save this and put this in a container. And now time for us to start prepping the chicken. So I typically like to cut the pack open and then drain out kind of the extra juice. And since we're going to be putting it in the frying pan, I'm going to make sure you stay clear of your fingers here. But since we're going to be putting it in the frying pan, I typically like to chop up the chicken a little bit thinner. And when I drain the chicken, I like to run the water so that it doesn't stay in my sink. And typically I try to handle the chicken as much as I can with my non-chopping hand so that one hand stays clean while the other one does the hard work for me. They did a pretty good job cleaning this up. I typically will cut this extra layer off right here. Just use the knife to get rid of that extra fat. And then we'll do this to the other side here as well. So I'm gonna cut it vertically and then I'll cut each of those pieces in half the short way here. So it'll give us kind of like little chicken nuggets, so to speak, right? Goal is that all of our chicken pieces are close to the same size. That way they'll cook roughly the same amount of time. So now that we got our chicken prepped, we'll get our burner going here on this side and we'll get some heat on there. Get a decent amount of oil in the pan. I've got it on medium-high heat right now. All right, so our oil is starting to heat up now. We'll get our chicken going first here. Spread it out, get some seasoning on this. As we start to brown it, a touch of our Himalayan salt. Use our black pepper, touch of cayenne, if you like the heat, touch of the umami, few red pepper flakes, and then a touch of this onion powder. Trying to get some good color on our boneless, skinless chicken thighs so that when we add the sauce, it looks even rich richer and heartier. And we're gonna wait until the rest of this starts to get a little bit whiter in color when it goes from pink to white, and then we'll flip it over, and that'll let us know that it's almost ready to be done. And we've got about 5 more minutes left on our vegetables in the oven here. We'll take a quick peek. Vegetables are looking pretty nice in the oven there, starting to get some color, and pretty soon we will give them a stir. Add a little bit of this crunchy chili onion situation here. So since we're making a glaze today, we're actually gonna pull the chicken now that it looks mostly done, and we're gonna separate it into a completely different dish so that we can use all of the oil and the flavors that are at the bottom of the pan to create an awesome glaze. And we also need honey for this. So I'm gonna turn the heat down a little bit as I remove the chicken from the pan. All right, as you can see, we've got some good color in the pan here. We've got some flavor from the crunchy onion situation. We're gonna add the onions in now, and we're gonna use this to pretty much saute and not necessarily caramelize, but saute the onions so they pick up a lot of flavor here. We'll see how warm this is. All right, before we get in too deep here with our onions, we're gonna check on our vegetables in the oven. Let's give everything on this pan a small little turn. Things are coming along pretty good here. Maybe about 10-15 more minutes. And we should be in a pretty good way with this. We'll level out the pan. But good color here. Things are coming along inside. So I'm gonna get these onions going around the pan here. Soaking up some of these good flavors. You can see they're immediately taking on some of this color. I'm a big fan of onions. You can omit the onions if you want. That is no problem at all, but it is always an option for you. So onions are starting to get brighter. We're getting some color in here, if you can see. All right, I'm gonna start to add our barbecue sauce to get, if you will, a slight reduction happening. And let me remind you, I'm not using anything fancy. This is the Aldi brand version of Sweet Baby Ray's. And actually used only about half a bottle of this. Give this a good stir. Start heating this up. And we're gonna add a generous amount of honey to this. And my favorite is the raw unfiltered honey. I get the big bottles and they usually last me a couple of months. And this will help our glaze take on that honey appearance that most glazes typically have. And so we'll add this as this heats up, give it a couple of swirls here, that little eye measure. It'll also sweeten up our sauce, which is okay. Can use a little flavor every now and again. And we'll want to keep this mixture moving now, since if the honey stays too still, it can burn. But that just added another dimension to our flavor here. So as you can see, the sauce is a little bit moving much quicker than it did before. We're gonna let this reduce a little bit. So I'm gonna heat it up to where you're gonna see bubbles at the surface of this sauce here. And I'm gonna keep moving it until I get it close to that kind of desired consistency I want. You could add more sauce, less sauce, or you could add even a touch more honey if you want to. But I'm trying to get it a little bit thicker. I want it thicker. So I'm gonna take the temp up. Starting to get a little bit thicker now. We're gonna give it just a little bit more time. There we go. We're getting much thicker now, much thicker sauce, even with it being warm. As you see, it takes a minute for it to drip off the pan. I'm gonna turn this heat down to medium-low. I'm gonna add the chicken back in, and we're gonna let the flavors kind of combine here and let them simmer together while we're waiting for our vegetables to finish up. So we'll coat all of the chicken in this and put the heat on medium. Still want it to bubble a little bit. See, each of our pieces of chicken is well coated now. I'm happy with how this chicken is turning out. The chicken is done. The glaze is in the space I want it to be in. I'm gonna turn this burner off, but I'm gonna leave it still in the pan here on the stovetop. And as you hear it, our vegetables are done. And so we'll grab them up out of the oven. Oh, these are looking good. These are looking good. All right, my friends, let's fix up a plate. So we'll get a good scoop of our roasted vegetables here. And there has been a small learning curve for me as I've been adjusting to having a gas stove. Your roasted vegetables will look a little different unless you want to broil them. Broiling will take a little bit more attention, and I have a tendency to burn things when I broil. So unless that's the only thing I'm working on, I typically don't broil if I can avoid it. And we'll get a good scoop of some of this chicken here. So a corn muffin. And there you have it, folks. About just under an hour's amount of work, and everything started relatively from scratch here. I can't wait to try this. I know the last video I didn't try anything on screen, but I'm gonna try the chicken today. Definitely one of those you have to be there moments. I'm loving it. This is really good. I'm gonna get into this. Y'all, good luck if you try this. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. And ultimately, I ended up using about a half pound of julienne carrots, a pound of green beans, just over a pound of the boneless, skinless chicken thighs. I had the seasonings, depending on your flavor of seasonings. You can make your own. If you get Jiffy cornbread mix, it'll be much cheaper than the muffins I bought. But just due to my limited kitchen, sometimes it's easier for me to buy pre-made baked goods. And then the sauce itself, the barbecue sauce without the honey, would cost you about $1 and change, no more than $2. And so I hope you guys enjoy this meal, and I'm gonna go enjoy mine. Once again, I'm Dr. J, and as always, be refined by the grind.